Trevor, are you ready for rapid fire?
Sure am.
Let's do it then. So we did some confidence rankings earlier in the show. This is the big one. It sits at the top of the totem pole. We're going to start rapid fire with this. Excluding anything that has to do with recruiting. Scale of 1 to 10, your confidence in the head coach, Marcus Freeman, right now.
5. How he handles this weekend is going to show me a lot with the trajectory of this program and where he's going to take it. But right now, 5.
Yeah, I'm at a 6 right now. This weekend is going to show me a lot as well, especially in terms of a potential, full circle type moment, because, we don't have to rehash all of it, but Marshall and Stanford, year one, 10 men on the field at the end of Ohio State. And it's like, okay, how much of that is on the head coach? How much of that is on the position coach for not having the right group of guys out there for the, all those different things. Okay. But then total letdown, total meltdown at Louisville. And, again, a lot of it had to do with the turnovers that were being committed. Sam Hartman's first real kind of day as a Notre Dame player. But sure, as Louisville fans will remind you, they saw that before when Sam Hartman was at Wake Forest, and they were kind of expecting that. But Notre Dame didn't seem like they were in the right frame of mind in that game last year either, and how much that played a part in it. They didn't look like they got out coached at Clemson last year. And it is really curious to me that Notre Dame played their worst games last year, albeit against some at least decent teams on the road. Whereas so far this year, you've got 4 games. They've played better in the 2 road games than they've played in the 2 home games against what are supposed to be inferior opponents, against MAC opponents. So this is a really big test in a lot of different ways for Marcus Freeman for me, because coming into this season, these kind of things, how you get your team prepared week in and week out, and not just for big games, not just for home games, not just for road games, all these different things, like that was the biggest thing. And coming into the season, I probably would have been somewhere around an 8 on him, but it has dropped off to a 6 right now because of the 4 games that we've seen, in just that peaks and valleys and the unevenness that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the level of the focus the team has. I mean, when you go on an away game, you limit the distractions. When you're at home, you got the pep rally, you got all the stuff going on with the band on campus. You have, you're at home. You're more comfortable. The times are different. When you go on an away game, you're on a business trip.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, hey, bed checks are at this time, and we got this at this time. We're at the stadium at this time, and everything you're doing is focused around football. So.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I expect this week to tell us a lot about both him and this team, this program, as it moves forward through this season. This
100%.
It's a very important game. So Freeman, of course, got on Adon Shuler after the unsportsmanlike penalty late in the first half Saturday that kept the Irish from getting the ball back. Here's how Marcus Freeman described it when he talked about it this week.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad texted me and said, man, you kind of got into number 8. But I told my dad I don't know if they saw what happened after that, and I told him I did what I thought, probably how I was raised, right? And I was upset because we had the momentum. I had a strong feeling if we called 2 timeouts, if we were able to get the ball back, we had a great chance to go down and score before half, which would have been huge. And we pride ourselves in being a disciplined football team. Every Friday we watch clips of other teams making mistakes, and we say we got to learn from the mistakes of others. And, we have a rule around here to hand the ball to the official, and he didn't do that and was called for a personal foul. And I lost my temper a little bit, but the first thing he said was, yes, sir, I own it. I shouldn't have done it. My bad. It won't happen again. And when a young person, a coach, or anybody, when you own your mistakes, like, now we can fix it. If you make excuses and you say it's somebody else's fault, it's hard to fix that until you own it. And he owned it. And right after that, as we were running halftime, I said, appreciate you owning it. I love you. Let's learn from it, and let's reload and get ready to come back the second half. And I love that kid. He is a great young man. And I hope I would treat my son the same way, right? And when you make a mistake sometimes, that you need a reminder of a selfish action you made. It's not always going to be lovey and kind. Love sometimes is tough, right? Love is tough sometimes. And that was an example of tough love, but he owned it. And it was my job to remind him after he owned it that I love you. Let's get back to work and let's go have a great second half. So that's kind of how that whole situation happened.
All right. So what did you think about Freeman's tough love out there on the field? And then, your thoughts on his explanation there as well.
I thought the response on the field was perfect, right? I mean, you look at the situation of the game and you're burning timeouts to try to get the ball back. And if there's one thing that we know about Marcus Freeman is that he's a coach that does demand excellence, especially in situations like this, right? So, to have that basically nullify what you could have done, you've gone down the field and put more points on the board. That's a big deal. So I think his response on the field is perfect. I thought his response to it was I think it was fine. I think it's a little weird when like a coach has to justify like why he's getting after one of his players after his players like really messes up. Like I think that's a little bit, like I get it.
That's the world we live in though, right?
It is.
Like especially when it's caught on camera, because one of the things that did happen, he explodes on him in the moment, which I thought was completely deserved. It's like that was as boneheaded play as you could make. It's fourth down. You're about to get the ball back, and then you do something like that. So he explodes in the moment. I think one play goes by, and then they're over on the sideline, and he's, Freeman's covering up his mouth with his hands, to make sure that the cameras can't see the rest of whatever it is he's saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's just one of those things, dude. I mean, if I had a nickel for how many times I watched Nick Saban explode on somebody on the sideline, I'd be able to pay my rent next month. But, I understand it's a generation in the time that we live in now, but you had a player that messed up, and yeah, to Sloppy Joe's point, he knows that he messed up. And Adon Shuler is known as being a very mature player. Yeah. But, I do think it's weird. What was the conversation like with Adon after that? And it's like, guys, he made a boneheaded mistake and his head coach got after him, like that's.
Well, and part of this as well. And like when you hear it, like that was it was literally a 2-minute explanation for why you choose a player on the sideline. And I get it. It's like, he's on the spot now. And as Brian Kelly found out, as Charlie Weiss found out before him, like any Notre Dame football coach finds out, that spotlight is very bright. And when you're on national TV every week, that camera finds you right away. At least Freeman, like he can't go purple face, so he's got that for him, but he's obviously known as a quote unquote players coach. Right. And so I think that at the very least, him responding that way in that moment was probably a little bit unexpected to some people, but the guy did show his emotion. And like he talked about, it was maybe a little bit of the old school upbringing, kind of tough love, upbringing that he had from a dad who was a career military man and all those different kind of things. And maybe like when you think about it that way, maybe that's why Marcus Freeman in general has kind of gone the other way with his, like his general approach to things, like I'm not going to be sort of that old school guy, day in, day out, marching orders, all those different things. He's a little bit different in general. But the other part of this is, like the old, you got to know who to kick in the butt and you've got to know who you can pat on the back. And ultimately Freeman did a little bit both with Adon Shuler, but because of Shuler's maturity, like you talked about, I think that Marcus Freeman knew that he could handle it if he lit him up the way he did. And I think everything that he did was appropriate.
Yep. I agree.
Wanted to go back a couple of comments that came in as we were talking about this weekend. Interesting. Michael said this game's going to be chippy. If you look around enough on YouTube, Louisville coaching staff let it be known they outcoached Freeman last year. I have to think this coaching staff is laser focused. I mean, I would hope that they're laser focused every week and that it wouldn't just take, like this kind of thing. But I think that like those are not comments that I haven't heard before about the Louisville coaching staff and some of the, things that came up afterwards. And there's like, even though Notre Dame and Louisville don't play very often in football, like the basketball program, and like because of the ACC connection, there's definitely, especially from the Louisville side, like there's zero love lost when it comes to Notre Dame. I will tell you that much. And Jeff Brom, like Marcus Freeman, goes back to Purdue, and so I don't know, like how much comes from that as well, but.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just like a weird little chippy Midwest thing. Like Notre Dame has been a Midwest powerhouse for so long, and I don't know, Louisville's trying to stake their claim. So I don't know. Maybe it could be something like that, but I don't know. It's weird. You would like to think that the Notre Dame coaching staff doesn't need any like locker room propaganda from the Louisville coaching staff to be laser focused for this game.
Yeah.
I think just looking at the box score from October 7th of 2023 is enough to get you laser focused for this game, but that's just me.
I don't disagree at all. And Baldwin's errant shot, he said for years, or for almost a year now, that Notre Dame will smack these guys this season. They have to be motivated to get something back for that game against Louisville last season. And, it's Louisville has come up, and I can't even remember the context. Like Louisville has come up from time to time, even before this week. Like it might have been during training camp with some of the players and stuff like that. Like it's come up. I have no doubt that there's going to be some chippiness out there on the field, and if that's what it takes, I'm fine with. As long as you don't, do what Adon Shuler did. As long as you keep your head when you need to keep your head, I don't mind a little chippiness. It's football. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost err on the side. I'd go as far to say as I would prefer to see it. This has been a pretty stagnant Notre Dame team over the last couple of weeks. Like, I mean, even against Purdue, like they played like it, they came out pissed off and they wanted to, really prove a point. And that was fantastic. But I mean, I want to see a team that's out to do business. Like that is what I want to see. Like yes, play and live between the whistle, but like it's okay to show a little bit of passion. This team embarrassed you on national TV last year. It's okay to get up and start talking a little something after the whistle. Yeah. I'm okay with that. Just don't be ripping off helmets.
Right. I think we want to see a little spark. We want to see some fire from these guys. I mean, let's be honest. That's kind of been missing so far this year. And I realize it's not as easy to get up for MAC teams and all those different kind of things, but hopefully we see that this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price alternated possessions in Saturday's game and ended up with a little bit more than 20 snaps apiece against Miami, Ohio. Should they start out alternating the running backs on possessions right away, or do you like maybe leaving Love out there a little bit more to kind of get in more of a groove early on?
I like the alternating because I think Notre Dame has two running backs that are both equally as explosive. And Jadarian Price last week was running with a little bit of purpose, man. Like he was letting those pads pop a little bit.
Yeah.
Honestly, it might be a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I don't think there's a wrong answer here. Like, like if you were to tell me, like if we were sitting back and somebody was like, hey, listen, Jadarian's getting the start today, and then we'll rotate in Jeremiyah Love or vice versa, I wouldn't be like, oh, come on. Like, I think it would be fine if I were to err on the side, just because I think he could be dynamic in the pass game. Start with Jeremiyah Love, but I think Jadarian is too good of a player to leave off the field. Ideally, we see them on the field both at the same time.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I'd be in favor of more 21 personnel, and seeing both of them, especially when you've got a running quarterback like Riley Leonard, and like Jesse did some whiteboard on that last week on the Countdown show about some different things that can come of that. And I think we'd all be in favor of seeing more of that.
100%. I mean, the thing is now every defensive coordinator that Notre Dame is going to go against knows that an objective is to get number 4 the football. So use him in your offense like it, whether you're getting the ball to him or not. But I just, my rule of thumb, especially when you have two guys like Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price, one of those two guys should be on the field at all times.
Correct.
Like I think very rarely. Now you have a guy like Aeneas Williams who came in the Purdue game on a 3rd down situation on a crucial down and he performed, and I think that's great. But when you're playing against the Louisvilles and the Georgia Techs and the USCs, when you have two guys like Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price, those two guys should not be on the sideline at the same time, in my opinion, very much.
No, I agree with that. Joshua Flynn says both need 15 to 18 touches. Same for the quarterback. We're a running team. Leonard gets better passing the more he runs. Embrace it. Let's go. Personally, Love is the starter. I'd like to see him out there at least for the first 2 series before you go to Jadarian Price to let him, see what's good. I don't like putting him on the field, taking him off. Now we're going to go with Jadarian Price. And
Fair.
I mean,
Yeah.
I see your side of things, and maybe they see it that way as well. It's like 1A and 1B. I don't know. But like Love is just such a weapon that I would like to at least see him get a couple series before you start going back and forth. But I still agree with what you're talking about with we need to see both of them on the field more at the same time. Stymie, this is exactly, where the whiteboard stuff came from. Malik Willis and the Packers with what they have done so far in the 2 weeks that Willis has been out there with some of the 21 type stuff that they have used. And it's just like drop Riley Leonard in for Malik Willis and Notre Dame could be doing some of the exact same stuff that the Packers are doing right now. Like you mentioned Aeneas Williams, like mine was the Devin Ford handoff, I think was that the second drive or the first drive where, like 3rd and 14 and they hand the ball off to Devin Ford. Like if that's the play call where it's just, a straight up handoff, and that's in which it seems like it was because you're basically playing it safe. You're inside your own 10-yard line. They probably didn't want to pass. Like that needs to be Jeremiyah Love out there. Now, if it's, if it's like, Riley Leonard, like he's making a pre-snap read and he's determining I'm either going to pass or I'm going to run. Okay, I understand Ford because he's your pass pro guy and all that kind of stuff.
That's what I was going to say. If Devin Ford is your 3rd down running back for strictly a pass pro purpose, okay. But if you're just going to, because you're backed up, I know exactly what drive you're talking about. It's the 3rd drive of the game. Notre Dame's backed up near their end zone. It starts out the series, Devin Ford and Aeneas Williams were on the field at the same time. Then Jeremiyah Love came in and got a negative 4-yard rush. They brought back in Devin Ford because it was 3rd down, but then they ran with him, which I'm not saying that Devin Ford is an unskilled runner. I mean, he is still a running back at the University of Notre Dame.
Right. But if that's Jeremiyah Love, he might actually turn that into a 1st down if he's carrying the ball instead.
Yeah, 100. I mean, if it's Jeremiyah Love or Jadarian Price, I mean, Jadarian Price against Purdue had a 75-yard touchdown run when they were just trying to burn the clock to take it into halftime.
Yeah.
You never know. And it has nothing to do with Devin Ford's skill set, but you have two guys that are just absolutely explosive. How they're not on the field on 3rd down in that situation specifically is beyond me.
No. And I don't know. Like we always wait for all these things that we've seen little pieces of, and we think that maybe when the opponent gets better, it's like, oh, now we're going to see more of this because this will be, like the secret weapon or the, like a big part of the game plan or whatever. But then it never materializes, and that's the thing with me is I just really still am having a hard time figuring out exactly what the true identity of this offense is. Right.
Yeah, I agree. At some point, because to your point, it's going to run out. Notre Dame's going into week 5. Like this is their 5th opponent. So at some point, if they are going to have a strategy, they just have to do that now.
Right.
Like we got, we have Miami of Ohio this week. We're going to try this personnel group. Like, hey, guys, at some point, you're just going to have to start gelling as an offense. And no matter who the opponent is, you're just going to have to run your stuff to get better at it.
So Adam Zucker of CBS and Rece Davis from ESPN didn't include Notre Dame in their top 25 ballots for this week's AP football poll. Fair or foul?
That foul. I don't really know how you do that. if I'm being 100% honest, like in my opinion, and sure, obviously there's a little bit of bias coming in here, go figure, but I don't think that you can name 25 teams in college football that are better than Notre Dame. Like I think you could name like 10 right now, like this current state, but I mean, not including them in your top 25 is silly.
I agree. Like, to leave them completely off the ballot, I think is ridiculous when you have teams like Boise State sitting down there at the bottom. BYU. Okay, BYU is 4-0 after beating Kansas State. Like, to a large extent, we're still trying to figure out just sort of what, some of these teams are. And I guess maybe that's, like what these guys are, maybe that's how you would rationalize it. Just how good is Notre Dame after losing to Northern Illinois and after a win over Miami, Ohio. But at the same time, it's one thing if you want to put them 23, 24, 25, even. I have a hard time leaving them completely off, though.
Yeah, I mean, AP voting is just weird. I mean, Michigan dropped from 10th to 18th after they got beat by 30 at home to Texas, and then they beat 11th ranked USC at home with 37 passing yards, and then they jumped 6 spots in the AP poll. So AP voting is just weird to me, if I'm being honest with you, because there's a good chance if Notre Dame beats Louisville this weekend, they just swap places. I mean, there's a good chance that happens.
Yeah.
So it's just weird.
Yep. That's very true, because that's the thing with Notre Dame is they're kind of in a place right now where you might even start to see more of these, kind of like being excluded from more and more polls just because there's not going to be much to impress anybody the rest of the way. And that's probably, again, how guys like this can rationalize keeping them off their ballot to begin with, because it's like, well, what have you done? Well, okay, you did beat Texas A&M, I guess, but okay. Fill in the blank. Atlanta Falcons owner Arthur Blank putting himself into the team's ring of honor is blank.
Hilarious. I don't know, man. That's weird to me. Like, being feels a little conceited. Plus, I don't really know what he's done that much for the Atlanta Falcons organization, and that just could be me not knowing enough. But I think that's a little weird.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of these dictators, like declaring him, like, oh, I get a hole in one on every hole, like like those, like, or like, oh, I am the basketball champ, like when Dennis Rodman, remember when he went over, to Southeast Asia and all that different kind of stuff. It just, what has, the Falcons have been to a couple of Super Bowls. They obviously haven't won a Super Bowl, and they infamously, blew the worst lead in Super Bowl history. And I find it pretty comical for the owner of a sports franchise to put himself in the ring of honor when essentially, he could just name the stadium for himself if he wanted. He could name the field for himself if he wanted. He could name anything for himself that he wanted. But to put yourself up there as well, where some of the great players of your organization have been. I thought it was pretty comical to put himself in there.
It is. It's like when I tell my mom that I'm her favorite son because I have 2 younger sisters. Like, it's kind of like a no contest sort of thing. It's like putting yourself in the ring of honor when you own the team, and doing it yourself is pretty crazy.
Yeah, Michael asking when Jerry's going to do it at Jerry World as well. And honestly, I had to stop and think for a second. Has Jerry Jones already put himself in the ring of honor?
It's a fair question.
He has not. Famously, it took him forever just to put Jimmy Johnson in there. But whether you think it's deserved or not, and you're completely entitled to say that it's not deserved, he is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So he probably just thinks, well, I'm in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I don't need to put myself in the Ring of Honor. He's got his gold jacket. So
Fair enough.
all right, start, bench, cut. These three as broadcasters: Tom Brady, Pat McAfee, Nick Saban.
Ooh, start Nick Saban, benching Pat McAfee, cutting Tom Brady.
I am starting Nick Saban. I'm benching McAfee, and I'm cutting Brady because, again, we're going as broadcasters. And Tom Brady has made, he's a little bit like Riley Leonard right now. He's made incremental progress in his first 3 weeks. He's doing okay. Some people actually just don't like his actual voice, like listening to Tom Brady. He's getting a little bit better. He's getting a little bit more comfortable. He still hasn't gone really deep with much of his analysis yet. I do think that he would have benefited from not jumping into the number one booth right away and actually getting a season or two just to go call games on a number two group, on a number two team, and then coming in. I mean, Tony Romo basically spoiled it for every broadcaster that came after him. And I think that a guy like Tom Brady, who is obviously a Hall of Fame credential player, I think that a lot of that plays into the fact that, hey, I'm going to take this big paycheck and I'm going to jump into the number one broadcast booth right away. I think Nick Saban, I think everyone is better for getting to hear some of his stuff on College Game Day. And I realize Pat McAfee is everyone's got their own taste and, the whole thing. I think on game day itself, McAfee helps bring some life out of Nick Saban as well.
Yeah, he does. I mean, with Lee Corso, what people fail to forget is Lee Corso used to be that guy, the guy that would bring the energy and
right.
And now they have that in Pat McAfee, and Pat's just so good with crowd work, man. It's just it brings College Game Day to a level that it hadn't been. So I was at the College Game Day in Columbus, Ohio, when Notre Dame played Ohio State, and Pat McAfee was not there. And man, it was dead. Seriously. I mean,
yeah.
I think Notre Dame was 5th, Ohio State was 2nd, primetime game in the Horseshoe, and College Game Day. You would have thought that nobody wanted to be there, So, and then my thing with Tom Brady, I'm sure he'll get better, but I just think that there's some people that aren't meant to talk about the game like that. If I sat one-on-one with Tom Brady in a film room, I bet it'd be awesome. But from a broadcasting standpoint, like you said, I think Tony Romo kind of ruined it for a lot of people.
Yeah. And the difference between Brady and Romo, other than the obvious differences in, championships and playing ability, but as broadcasters themselves, is the thing that, Tony Romo was an undrafted free agent. He wasn't even, Mr. Irrelevant like Brock Purdy. He was an undrafted free agent. He was just a dude who worked his way up through the ranks and became the quarterback, the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. He's just like a guy who, from a personality standpoint, people tend to gravitate to. And you listen to him, and he's the kind of guy you would have fun sitting in a bar with, drinking beer and talking about football. Tom Brady is drinking his avocado juice. He is never... He will never be mistaken for an everyman. Tony Romo is an everyman. And that to me is what makes him such a great broadcaster, especially when you compare him to a guy like Tom Brady. And Josh says Brady literally calls every offensive play before they run it pre-snap. Now, literally is probably a bit of a stretch, because having watched 2 of the 3 games that he has done so far, since he's done all Dallas Cowboys games so far. The only one I didn't watch, I was at the game in Cleveland, but I did notice a couple times last week where he thought he was going to be calling what was going to be happening, but something completely different happened after that. So I'd say he's probably maybe 60-40 at best in terms of his success rate doing that right now.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Tony Romo is a guy that you would just want to go and grab a beer with and watch NFL Red Zone with all day. And And Tom Brady's kind of like that guy at work that, like, you have to try to impress, but you don't really know why. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good comparison. I like that. We'll end it on that. Enjoyed it, Trevor. First show with Trevor Trowbridge. Are you like tired of sitting at this point? Because I think you started your day, what, 4.5 hours ago or so?
Yeah, I went live with Brian at 2. So yeah, but no, this was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you having me on here. Not tired of sitting. I am ready to get some food though.
I bet you are.
So
I bet you are.
I've had to keep muting my microphone because I can hear my stomach. So
all right.
Yeah.
I won't let you rumble any longer. Hit the like button. Excuse me. Before you leave. And Trevor, again, thanks so much, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here, man.
All right, hit the like button, and we will talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.